Hello, everybody, and welcome to the next iteration of our K-Force webcasts, where we like to focus on the modern world of work. Once again, I'm Andy Thomas. I am the CMO of K-Force, and I could not be more thrilled to be facilitating this session that we're having today. Now, as I've said before, during these sessions, I've been with K-Force now for over 20 years, and I will tell you, I can't remember a more exciting time for our business. For those of you who don't know about K-Force, we are a solutions firm. We have been in business for over 60 years, and what we do is we provide solutions to our clients, helping them to address their most significant opportunities and challenges through solutions by the application of 30,000 knowledge workers, as we like to call our professional experts, that are deployed each year. So, with that said, we've got a lot to cover today as we move forward through this. But I do have to hit you with some what we'd call housekeeping items. That being said, if you look to the right hand of your screen, okay, what you will see is a Q&A panel, and you can type in or submit any questions that you have throughout our discussion. We will respond to as many of them as we can. We already got a lot of these in the administration. So for the ones that we can't get to today, we will be following up with you, and we'll also be sending out a recording at the end of today's session, along with a feedback survey. And we always ask for your feedback because it helps to make us better. But so now what we're going to do is we're going to jump in. And today I'm thrilled. We have an expert panel today. And I would tell you, this group that we have, I can assure you it will not only be an informative one, but it should be a very vibrant session that we have. And but before we even start off, what we really want to talk about is agile transformation. And, really the title that we have for today is, practices to accelerate your agile journey. And I'll start with what we're really seeing in the wake of the pandemic. Really two major themes or takeaways. One is that companies who have agile practices embedded into their operating models have really more successfully managed the impacts of COVID. The other being, adoption of digitization has accelerated years beyond pre-pandemic projections. So, with that said, throughout the discussion, we're going to really break this down in an organized manner as best we can. We're going to address the people, process, and the technology needed for successful agile transformation. And we have some incredible experts. So let's meet our expert panelists as we dive into this. So first and foremost, I shouldn't say foremost because they are all equally impressive, but we have Dave Shanker. Dave is the Director of Platform Engineering for Kinetic Consulting. He leads DevSecOps, Platform Engineering, and Managed Services divisions at Connect. His expertise over the years has led many companies from startups to Fortune 100 really succeed in their development of IT and related business strategies. Next, we have Roger Martinez. Roger is the PMO manager at NextEra Energy. Roger has over 25 years experience in project management, operations, resource management, and business processes. Roger is certified in a diverse range of methodologies, and there are many of them. So here we go: Agile Coach, Scrum Master, Agile Program Manager, ITIL Foundations, and he's an SPC4 and a Lean Six Sigma Yellow Belt. And finally, last but not least, we have K-Force's own Kunal Suri. Kunal is a technology and transformation leader here at K-Force. He provides specialized solutions for a national portfolio of clients in innovation, emerging technology, and modern IT services, including application development, digital, and agile DevOps transformation. Kunal is a certified project strategist, a Scrum project owner, and an SPC4 as well. So we have so many questions. As I mentioned, even upon administration, we got a bunch of them. And we're going to break it down by people, process, and technology. But first, to start, really just a general question. And we've had a kind of a catalyst from a McKinsey report that we saw. And so as we look at the overall agile landscape today, McKinsey found that companies that ranked higher on managing the impact of COVID-19 crisis were also those with agile practices more deeply embedded in their enterprise models. That's no coincidence. I'd like to put it open to the whole panel to say, why is that why is that not a coincidence? Why do we think that is? Roger, I'll let you open it up.
Sure. I think the answer is pretty brief and simple for me. The ones that have the embedded agile practices, one of the main things about agile is being able to pivot according to your situation, according to your customers' needs, right? So the teams are already set and ready to pivot at any kind of request or any kind of situation. And in this situation, in this crisis, if you have all these practices already embedded in your teams, it just helps you pivot towards this kind of crisis as well, and working remote and doing the different development if needed than originally requested, right, or needed.
Sure. Kunal, what are your thoughts?
Andy, first of all, thank you, sir, for giving us the opportunity and platform to discuss about business agility and how critical it is, no matter the size and the organization, right? My thought around COVID-19, it has changed the way the business was conducted, right? The focus shifted from not only providing the best customer experience, but also how quickly that experience can be deployed, right? What we have seen is that the companies with cross-functional and empowered agile teams were able to respond and adjust much faster than others, as they already had a lot of practices and structure in place to deal with this change quickly.
Excellent. Dave, I believe that brings us to you.
Well, both Kunal and Roger kind of hit it exactly on the head. It's when you're running an agile organization, it's inherently going to allow you to pivot and address things that will deliver value as quickly as possible. And because you have the ability to do that, you can react to whatever the market's going at you whenever. And you can react to whatever you deliver. You may be able to turn around and say, hey, let's push this feature out so we can do deliveries. And then 2 weeks after, you figure out, well, we're delivering, and now all of a sudden we're not able to get the deliveries out fast enough, and this is why. So let's pivot our development or our business and address that. That's why those companies have been able to address it and been able to be so successful in trying times like these.
Excellent, guys. Thank you. It's interesting because you all bring unique vantage points, so much appreciated. So we're going to dive into our people question, and it's always nice to start with leadership. So I'd ask, how important is it to have leadership aligned with your agile transformation throughout your firm? Kunal, thoughts?
Sure. So when we talk about agile transformation, generally the first thing we hear is that agile is only for IT or technology teams to deliver value faster. And I think that is not a true statement. An agile transformation requires change in culture and mindset of the whole organization, may it be marketing, sales, or finance, right? The fundamental unit of work in an agile transformation is creating that environment for agile to be able to operate, right? And this is why one of the main reasons leadership buy-in and alignment is so critical for this agile journey. In an emergent agile organization, key leaders should be willing to invest a significant portion of their time and role model new behaviors and mindset. So to summarize, leadership alignment is one of the main ingredients, I feel, for a successful transformation.
Very cool. Roger, anything to add to that?
Yeah, actually, it goes and aligns with it. It's for me, the experience that I've had in the different companies is the leadership. This is the most underestimated thing, right? Is the leadership will want to do agile, for example, right? This is what I hear. We want to do agile. And what they don't realize is they haven't taken a deep dive into how much commitment and how much change that's going to cause for they themselves, right? They always think, well, it's going to change the team's mindset and we have to make the team more efficient. But to make a true transformation, it takes the leadership itself to make those commitments and mindset in the way that they finance their projects and products, right? The different way that you finance. And I've heard a bunch of times, the PM can do the Scrum mastering and the RTEs and all that. So when you get into the different roles that you need to make a good transformation, those are all things that they need to commit to and understand before they even start day one, right? So that it's very important for them to understand it and align with it and understand their own role.
Well said. All right, I'm going to move on to the next one. There have been conversations around investing in people and really not projects. Obviously, giving the ability to pivot to the projects that are needed most. How are you seeing that applied in different organizations? Kunal?
So this is a great question, Andy. Think about an organization which has been using Agile for a long time and have a lot of teams, Agile teams working on different initiatives. Very often when we talk to these leaders, they tell us that they expected more business value delivered through the whole Agile transformation, but they have not seen it yet, right? If we look at Agile, I think Agile has a set of best practices like leadership mindset, talent management, and architecture, which helps teams operate at their full potential and deliver maximum value. But one of the key areas is the whole planning and budgeting process, right? Which a lot of organizations who are going through this Agile transformation tend to forget, right? Generally, planning and budgeting, if you look at it, was traditionally done on a project basis, right? And 95% of the companies are still doing that, right? They still focus on that traditional way of budgeting and funding a project with a very specific outcome. This hinders the ability of teams to innovate and pivot quickly to new and better ideas. And that is why there have been a lot of conversations to invest in teams, which I call it, and a lot of experts call it, a product-centric approach, right? These products can be technology platform or a business capability or customer experience, but this funding approach really aligns with teams with a set of business outcomes and allows the team to continuously evolve the product through a backlog of features. So unlike a project, the teams and products can exist indefinitely and provide that security to people and increase their productivity and morale. And in this approach, the product managers generally have the autonomy to decide and pivot to highest priority initiatives based on that business value.
Excellent. Dave, anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, just reinforce exactly what Kunal said is, the human capital is by far the largest capital any company can have. And keeping leveraging that the team that you have in order to deliver on your goals is the difference between a successful company and a non-successful company. If you're not able to keep those teams motivated and keep them aligned to where you want to go and align yourself to where they want to go because they're on the ground, they see this firsthand, then you're missing opportunities to in your business that could potentially your competitor can come in and take advantage of.
So, Dave, I'm going to stick with you as we move on to the next one. Obviously, the war on talent is remarkably competitive. So, talk us through some keys to attract and retain the best talent for a transformation.
So I've found. I mean, I've hired and interviewed and had the privilege of leading so many really talented individuals, and I found the best thing I can do to attract talent is one, align our goals to their goals, our goals being the company, and two, help align their goals with what the company can do for them. Once I learned that that trick, if you want to call it, insight, I don't think there's ever been a candidate that we were going after or that we wanted to hire that we haven't been able to bring over because of that. Now, the part that I found after that is keeping that alignment going forward, because with everyone, our goals change, my goals change, their goals change, and it's to keep that conversation going to create the facility to allow that open conversation so that we can keep that alignment. And once you have that, you have excited, smart, motivated resources that will, they don't mind working over the weekend for a couple of days or whatever it may be, going that extra mile because they enjoy the work.
That's great. Kunal, obviously we're always aggressively looking at Kforce for our clients and for ourselves, but what are your thoughts?
No, I agree with Dave. It boils down to culture and environment of the organization, right? If you look at, again, leadership, right? Now, this is more at the managerial level, but the goal is to invest in people, align with their goals, provide them the right training, the right education, the right tools they need to be successful in their current role and their future goals, right? In addition to that, trust your team members. You hired them, so I'm sure they are good, and provide them environment where it is safe to fail, because from failures we learn, right, and we become better. So that is very critical. And now COVID-19 has showed us how critical personal life has become in addition to professional life. So providing that flexibility by moving focus from number of hours worked to the quality of work delivered by the team has become another, critical success factor to retain the talent.
It really changes everything.
Yeah.
So Roger, I've got an interesting one for you. Which is most effective to lead an agile transformation, by committee or with a centralized PMO with one person leading?
Well, yeah, that is one that I've encountered several times. So when you research and you're going through Agile, right, you're thinking about how you're going to do your transformation. You got to build that foundation. And one of the things that is discovered through the whole transformation and what you're building is, the teams should be the ones deciding on the work, right? And they get the team factor really embedded in their minds when they're going through, what they're going to do for this transformation. But what is not noticed is even these teams are needing a product owner, right? Someone that's going to drive towards what requirements need to be first. And there's other teams other team members that do other decision making. What happens in a committee is funny is, you get into these kind of old martial arts movie kind of thing where, your kung fu is not as good as my kung fu. And, you get into these discussions of posturing and my team does it this way and, your team does it the other way. And you go through all these theoretical things in these meetings and you really don't get actionable items to move forward, right? Without that one central person aligned and making the decisions, no one is wrong, really. And all this posturing, no one's solution to these things is wrong. You just need to decide on what's best for the company and what's going to bring the most value, right? So to me, that alignment with a PMO or a program manager, however, your company does it best, or however you feel that alignment would be best, that's really, I think, the way to go, especially when you're laying the foundation, right? Is you want everyone to align to a certain vision and a cause, and without that aligned vision, it tends to go astray.
Excellent. Dave, any color that you'd give beyond where Roger just went?
No, he hit it on the nail again. This is awesome being on a panel with such smart individuals that are talking about this stuff. Makes my job easy when I talk. I just add on to that is it's having that one individual that can show strong leadership to help move those things along, right? And what we like to do is see that in any teams where we can, because Roger's right. There's no wrong way to do some of these things. It's just what's what's going to deliver the best value right now and strategically long term. And hey, we're agile, so we can pivot if we need to later on, but let's make a decision, move forward, and see how it goes.
Absolutely.
So Dave, I'm going to let you go first on this next one. That way, no one will have said where you were going to go. How do you manage resource capacity?
I resource capacity is always a fun one. I rely on several tools, but I've realized one that myself included are really horrible at time estimations and judging what's needed to get stuff done. So I have a couple of tricks around taking anyone's time estimation and doubling it just in case. But also just keeping an eye on how things are going, right? We don't want people killing themselves trying to get stuff done because they feel a need to get done to meet Scrum goals and whatever goals might be set. But also just having those conversations in stand-ups or in Slack chats and understand how things are going and seeing how that velocity is progressing and keeping that conversation open allows me to take the information I get from tools and do those estimations and align it with what I'm seeing on the ground and pivot where I need to. And lastly, and this is a key part, and I'll mention again, is making sure people understand it's okay to not deliver everything you committed to delivering if you ran into something that was unexpected. We'll learn from it, and in the next few sprints and the next iterations, we'll adjust to it and move on. But it's setting up that safe space, as my colleagues have mentioned before.
Roger, anything else that you'd add?
That was awesome. So yeah, so one of the things that I start with is again with leadership, right? The first thing is foundation of this is for leadership to understand, and for us to understand as leaders, is it's better to move the needle in larger increments with fewer projects than to take on 50 projects and move the needle 1% at a time, right? And that task switching between your resources is just driving them crazy, right? And it's it's counterproductive. So that's the first thing to recognize. So what we did is we have an intake process that we built. We score, and this gives us a full view of all the work that we have. And then what that has is a score associated with it, and that score is a number, but it associates also small, medium, large. Then that translates into being able to see, for example, as a PMO, we have project managers that we manage. So we're able to see what capacity each project manager has as far as how many projects they're managing or looking over. And then it tells me whether they're over allocated or not based on the points that they're able to do. So this could be done in any kind of tool that you might have as far as project management. And no matter how you use your story points or how you choose to do the resource capacity, it could be done. I think the foundation is being able to view all your work and then be able to see all your resources and make sure that they're not over allocated to some kind of point system. You can drill down later on into the hours that they work and all that and accumulate, but at an overall kind of portfolio level, you want to make sure that there's some kind of a system that you don't over allocate them and you don't try and tackle 50 things at the same time, right? There's a timeline that you can balance out.
No, that was outstanding on both parts. Thank you guys. So we're going to move on to process. And now, Kunal, do you recommend starting implementation by department or by project?
Andy, it depends on the organization and the environment, right? We have seen organizations taking the all-in approach and starting that big bang transformation. But the most common approach is design, pilot, and scale approach. And in this approach, what we have seen is that the leaders aspire and they design what the overall transformation will look like, and then run pilots with multiple teams to iterate and then solidify the plan before committing to scale up to the whole organization, right? As we discussed this earlier, it is not about a department or a project anymore, but more so choosing the right teams for that pilot, right? The teams may be part of a same product or department, or may come from multiple lines of businesses in order for them to get a variety of, feedback and, finalize their transformation approach.
Excellent. Dave, thoughts?
Yeah, it just like Kunal said, it's very specific to the company. And one of the things that taken into account for is the technology aspect of it, right? Is that you might have a department that is ready for an agile transformation from a process perspective, a people perspective, but from a technology perspective, they're just not there yet, and it might take some maturing from that aspect to be able to have a successful agile transformation. So we'd like to look at the entire picture and then make the decision. In most cases, it's always started out with a kind of a department level transformation initiative that starts out with a pilot, just like Kunal said, and start getting some quick wins and some excitement, because there's nothing better to motivate people when you start seeing your colleagues excited about the work they're doing and excited about the wins that they're accomplishing, and kind of building on that excitement. They start discussing what they're doing, what's successful and why it's successful, and all of a sudden you'll find yourself in a situation where the transformation is happening organically without much done on your side to make it happen.
Got it. So it's interesting. We're starting to get some questions coming in, and one came in back to that we can apply to process based on something Roger was mentioning in people. Do we have a flow chart for resource management, Roger, that for the process you were discussing earlier?
I do. We had to start with the flowchart. So I'm a very visual person. So I'm always on Visio and I'm always doing the process first. So I can kind of work out the kinks visually and see them before I start building, right? And so I have my little proof of concept that I do. And I do. And I'm welcome. I can share that with anyone that's on the call now. I'm welcome to share it through you guys if you just send that to me. But we have it all processed out, and we even have through the tools, how to do it, the ranges, everything is documented out. So I'm happy to share it.
That's great. Thank you. All right, so Kunal, we're going to go back to you. Most teams spend only 15%, maybe 20% of their time working and the rest waiting. How can we speed up those wait times so the team can work on more value add activities?
So there can be a lot of reasons for that, right? For those delays and handoffs. And the most common ones are dependencies on other teams and not enough information to continue the work, right? Some of the way our teams have been able to minimize that in past are by calculating the cost of delay, right? Which is a great way to identify and prioritize the most valuable and shortest jobs to be done first. Managing the work in progress, right? If all the tasks are complex, then the programmer may not be able to finish the task and pass it along to the tester. So that's why you want a good mix of task and a proper prioritization to minimize those handoff delays. And then reducing the number of handoffs by creating cross-functional agile teams. A great example can be having an estet in the team who can help with some of the programming or coding while waiting for another task to be completed and passed on for testing, right? And then last but not the least is having a DevOps mindset imbibed within the organization, right? This will help the information flow very smoothly and with accuracy, while minimizing the delays. So I think those are some of the things which we look at to minimize the handoffs or delays.
Fantastic. Dave, anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, the DevOps mindset is a critical one for me, and especially since it's my practice area. A lot of the stuff, principles from DevOps, we try to leverage with our clients in order to get past some of those blockers. So a great example is a feature flagging features that's gone out. At the very beginning of the planning session, we try to identify any areas where we might be dependent on a team or dependent on someone else external to the team, and create spikes or other stories to help get that we can put it in the sprint there. But if we go through feature development or any type of development and we find ourselves saying, well, you know what, we're blocked here, we need to get another team to make changes on their side, I would push for those teams to feature flag it. All right, well, what do you have so far? Develop that, deploy it out, but have it disabled, and therefore on the next sprint coming up, we can get that collaboration, or whatever sprint it makes sense to get that collaboration going and start building that out. And it may be that we bring in someone from another team to build that out, or as part of our sprint team for that specific sprint, or it may just be that we have a conversation. The other aspect there is from just organizational level, and Amazon is a great implementer of this, is they implement what's called kind of service agreements, and every product team for that service that they offer guarantees a certain level of functionality and features, and they guarantee from a development standpoint when those will be out, so you can count on that going into your development. So you can develop a feature that's going to use their service even if it's not there yet, but if you spec out what you need and provide it to them, you could deploy your code and just wait for them to implement it. And once they implement it, flip a flag, and it'll get enabled in the environment. And I mean, there's a whole another section of enabling features out there that we can go into that I won't take up too much time on now. But it's just the whole process that they implement there to do that helps cut down on having to wait and cut down and just be dependent on other teams and not being idle.
No, very cool. Very cool. So let's go back to Roger. Roger, first actionable step in an implementation or transformation.
The first thing to do is really understand what you want this transformation result to be and how far up you're willing to go. So, you know, that's the first thing to understand, is what value you want this to do. You don't want to just change methodologies, especially in a company that's already running, right, not a startup. But you don't want to change just because it's, you know, the popular thing that you've heard that works, right? You need to understand fully what you need these teams to do, and take it all through, because when you do it, for example, for your software development teams, it's going to affect also your infrastructure teams, right? So how are they going to communicate? Because you want alignment. So you want to be able to make sure that when this transformation happens, and you know how you want to do it, and to a certain level, you don't want to change your financial structure, you still want to continue with business cases and things like that, define that beforehand, instead of thinking that you're going to be, you know, doing this full transformation and then midway you've achieved some level of success, but you're not willing to pivot, right, to make sure that the rest from a certain level up continue the business the way that they want to do it, right? So it's kind of a line. But the first thing is truly understanding what you're doing before, and the value that you want to get out of it before you even, you know, knock on that first door and open it, right?
Absolutely. Kunal, anything to add to that?
I mean, I agree with Roger. Just because the cool kid around the block is using, or going agile, doesn't mean everybody should, right? It comes down to the tipping point, right, where the reason for change becomes so compelling that maintaining that status quo is not adequate anymore to achieve, the future goals, right? And when we talk about future goals, that becomes very critical again, because if they do not have a clear vision of what future looks like, then it is, really hard to realize the economic benefits this change can deliver.
Excellent. So, guys, we're going to move on. We're going to go on to technology. With that said, we'll go back to McKinsey again. According to a new global survey of executives, their companies have accelerated the digitization of their customer and supply chain interactions and of their internal operations by 3 to 4 years. And the share of digital or digitally enabled products in their portfolios has really accelerated by a shocking 7 years. So it kind of gives some context, as we tee up these questions. And I'll go right back to you again, Kunal. What supporting tools and systems are really necessary in your purview, or should at least be considered for a successful workplace?
Absolutely, they should be considered. And let's take example of the last 8 to 10 months, what we've been going through, right? I really feel technology is the one big piece or integral piece which has enabled the organizations and teams to still stay effective and relevant, right? One suggestion which I always give to our clients is try to keep that toolkit as minimal as much as possible and provide training on each tool, because without proper training, it becomes messy. So there are 4 major categories, Andy, in terms of tools to help increase that efficiency. The first one is Agile planning, workflow, and reporting tools. Everybody has a lot of different tools, right? But especially with the new culture of remote distributed teams, one should have a tool with the ability to visualize the workflow like Kanban. The second category is communication and collaboration tools, which should have the ability to whiteboard and do video conferencing. Some basic things, right? But they work very well. The other one is gamification tools, right? Which now a lot of agile, planning or management tools are coming up with that. But gamification of planning and retrospectives make it a little fun for the team members to enjoy that process, even though they are working remotely and they are not together anymore. Last but not the least, a company should have some automation tools and mature integrated development environments to decrease the defects and the time it takes to fix those defects. So those are 4 big categories when we think about tools and technology, which will enable a team to become successful.
Great. All right. So Dave, which project management tools are you using? You're on mute, buddy. Kunal, I'll go to you.
Perfect. Yes. So there is a wide variety of tools, as I was mentioning earlier, available in market when it comes to agile project management. And the tools really, varies by our client's environments and capabilities requirements. And generally, we define which tool to use during our vision and strategy phase of the engagement. But keeping that in mind, I would suggest one thing, in this time of constant shift, one should consider a project management tool which not only allows the regular tasks of planning and reporting, but as I mentioned earlier, the workflow visualization, gamification activities to support those remote distributed teams. And last but not the least, something very critical for team members, given new team members are joining or the existing team members are not together in a in-person environment, the tool should be very, very intuitive and user-friendly so that the work can be done efficiently.
Excellent. Now, Dave, I think you were trying to chime in earlier. We lose Dave.
There he is.
So yeah, the internet went down here, so I'm tethering to my phone. Hopefully this has enough battery power.
You're being truly agile, Dave.
Yes. So Dave, basically, which project management tools are you using?
So I'm a big advocate of the Atlassian portfolio. I use everything from Jira to Bitbucket to some of their portfolio management tools. Um, that being said, there's no perfect tool. That's the one I know right now and know the best. And I know when I start with any type of agile project or anything, I try not to focus on the tools and focus on the methodology first, and then find the right tool that fits the maturity of the organization, also the finances of the organization, and then build upon that.
Got it. Roger, how do you feel that firms can enable the ongoing evolution of their architecture?
So that's a tough one, because that's something that's all based on what kind of industry you're in. But I think making sure that you make the right decisions on your architecture as far as any infrastructure, right, is making sure the right decisions that make the right fit. Again, all this kind of goes back to the same thing. You don't want the coolest tools just because they're there. You don't want to start, making, purchases that on several tools at the same time. What I find is when you're going through your architecture and you're going through your infrastructure, a lot of tools seem to come up, and it bogs down the company by trying to implement these tools all at the same time. And then all of a sudden you're working projects that need to be worked, but a lot of your resources are going towards these others, and the tools weren't sufficiently researched to kind of tell that they have similar functionalities to them. So you may be doubling up on something and using more tools than what you need to be able to get things done. So that's something that I feel is kind of important. There is making sure that, again, you do the research and make sure that you're not going for the latest, greatest cool tool.
One thing I wanted to add really quick is just like Roger said, it's you want to make sure you use the right tools, but I also like to look at how much time I'm spending and through all my processes, and then try and find the tool there. A couple years ago or last year, we found that we were spending a lot of time trying to figure out how much features were costing and how much development was costing in order to release a feature. And we found a tool, Focal Ops, that allows you to just develop as normal, do your run as normal, and it'll automatically calculate the cost based off of the input it gets from some of your ERP services. So that's going to be a big time saver for us, and it might be worth it, or will be worth it from a cost perspective.
Excellent. All right. So, guys, you've done a remarkable job of addressing these questions. And as I had mentioned, we've had a lot coming in as we've moved forward through the session. So I've got a few that I want to throw out to you as they come in. And this will be free for all for anybody to jump in. But how has work from home impacted agile transformation for those companies in early agile transformation versus those who have been practicing it for some time?
So I'll jump in.
I'm leaving that one open for anybody who wants.
I'll jump in on that one. So, I've got a few contacts, and fortunately, I can give you the perspective from both. Right? We feel we're kind of mature in our agile transformation, and we have not truly been impacted by this switch. Just like we started our conversation at the beginning, the more that you're embedded in these practices, the easier it is to pivot in these situations. And for us, pivoting for example, for us specifically in my department, which is mostly infrastructure, it's keeping the lights on, literally, right? Making sure that everything is working in our grid, and making sure that everything continues. So we were able to pivot. Now, I can tell you that some of my colleagues in other companies that have just started or are not really using any particular, methodology, that just kind of work in the way that they've always kind of done it, right? We work the way that we always work. They've had a tough time. They've had a tough time with the pivot. They've had a tough time being able to then move towards the needs that the company needs, and even moving towards their infrastructure being able to handle the amount of remote workers that now need to be on their system. So it is a tougher time right now, that I can tell you that if you're not able to make that shift and make a shift quickly with a team that's used to being able to pivot that way.
And Andy, just to add on to what Roger said, right? It again boils down to people, process, and technology. For a mature agile organization, they have a lot of best practices in place, tools in place, and their people already have a working agreement in place how things should be done. But when it comes to an organization who just started off with this journey and COVID-19 hit, there are a few pieces or best practices to consider where a lot more stress or should be added on, like the product vision, right? Building and socializing the product vision so that the team can align itself to what is the goal of this whole initiative, right? Adopting a coach leader style. Yes, we have a lot of great leaders, but we need those leaders in this time and age to meet with the team members and coach them and make sure they are, taken care of. If they need any help, if they need any guidance, that is being provided, right, in terms of best practices and whatnot. Um, Celebrating small wins often, that is one thing which I've seen when we move to remote environment, and some of the organizations which were just starting off with this journey, um, teams were doing great work, small wins were coming, but they were not being celebrated because they are in a remote environment. So that is still a critical piece to maintain that morale and motivation. And then last but not the least, the daily stand-ups, which is one of the important Scrum ceremonies. Look into extending that to cover today and tomorrow. Generally, with our teams, we have extended that to 30 minutes. That way, if there is any offshore or nearshore piece, then we can minimize those handoffs and delays.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. All right, so we've got some really good ones coming in, as I mentioned. Great incoming question from George F. Thank you, George. Can Agile only work with dedicated teams? What if we don't have the luxury to dedicate an entire team to a project and or a sprint?
Oh, that's always the start of a transformation, right? Is that we don't have that. That's we started the same way. The other places that I've consulted with start the same way. You don't have those dedicated. But again, it comes down to, I think, what we were talking about earlier is you gotta be able to see all the work that's coming in, all the work that you're about to do. And although you may not have 100% dedicated teams, you don't want to have 5% allocation, right? So you may want to start with a simple kind of, ceremony where you go through and you kind of map it out to 25, 50, or 100%, right? Can you do those, or maybe at 25 increments, maybe, even 75, but try not to give people, 10% of work here and 10% of work there. Bring it down to what is the most important projects you need to do. Rank them, prioritize them. Projects, think of them just like your backlog, right? As stories on your backlog. They're projects, and sometimes you need to say no. Sometimes it's better to be able to say no to this project, prioritize the other, and then you'll probably end up doing them all in the same timeline, but you'll get the benefit of the ones that you've just finished a lot faster than moving all 3 or 4 or 50 along at the same time. So it's very important to be able to realize that, visualize it, and set that goal, right?
Absolutely.
I agree. And Roger, go ahead.
I was say really quick, as a consulting company, we run into that all the time. You get a client come in and they only really need 30% of your time right now because they have things on their side that they need to account for. But We have someone for 100%. So now we start allocating the people to multiple projects. And of course, as soon as you do that, now all of a sudden you need someone 200% of the time. It's always a fun experience. But like Roger said, is what allocating it in blocks. What's the minimum I can do here, and having that backlog where, if, for example, I'm allocated 50% of the time, but that other 50% is no longer needed, I can go into the backlog, pull that up, and start working towards that, and now getting ahead of the game. Expectations are set correctly with the engagements with the clients, and we don't risk burning out the resources, the people working on there, the teams, by doing that.
Okay, thank you. So how long, this is coming from in from Vic S. Vic, you've had a couple of very good ones, thank you. But how long should a company anticipate an agile adoption to take?
It's a journey to a destination, right? As simple as that. Now, it depends on the organization, culture, which they have in place. And, sometimes it takes 6 months to a year, depending on the maturity and how adaptable people are to the change. Sometimes it can take years, right? So, again, it is a journey which leadership needs to be aligned with, all team members need to align with, and see what exciting results they can get through this transformation. And that is the result.
Yeah, I would say it is according to the different organizations, but I would say if you need a timeline in general, pretty much, I would say at least you're going to see most of the maturity and the benefits at about the year, right? I think that's really the thing that you're going for. And again, how much of the organization are you going to transform? Where is it that you're going to stop that value where you say, here, I want to get to this certain level, and that's where our value is made, and I don't need to change finance and HR into Agile, right? Or whatever that other reason might be. But the transformation for, like for example, this organization, it's about 200 plus projects at one given time. 200 different kind of from solar farms to wind farms to different things like that. So those took about that year to be able to say we're at a good point, and you never really stop innovating. You will always find that your journey doesn't truly stop, because you're always trying to find a better way of doing things. You might have the greatest tool in the world, but now you need a tool that gives you that portfolio view, because some of these tools, back to the earlier question, right, is some of these tools can do great at project level, but not so great at portfolio level, and you got to get to that, right? So there's different innovations that you're going to do along the way. It never really stops, but your comfort level where your teams and everyone is running smoothly, I would say, is that target at about that year is where I think you're going to get those results most of the time.
And Roger, just to add on to that, another thing to consider is, are you a software company? Are you a hardware
Absolutely.
company, or are you a mix, right? Think about Lockheed Martin or something where you have a lot of third-party, partners involved in sending you different parts, right? So you get into portfolio level, program level. So those complexities can also increase that level of transformation and the time frame which is needed to bring everybody on the same page.
Absolutely. And Andy, if I could take a moment, I want to give Kunal 2 gold coins for that answer. I like his things of gamification. Dave, you've got 2 gold coins as well for yours.
Well served. You're in charge for the remainder of this call. You're in charge of recognition. Great job. All right. So, interesting one. How can partner teams like marketing and communication better insert themselves in the agile development and implementation process to avoid last-minute scrambles?
Oh, wow. That's a great one. So marketing communication says it all. And one of the biggest things that organizations need for the transformation itself, and even for the projects thereafter that you're working on, you need to communicate well to those end users, to the stakeholders, of what features, functions, what end user experiences are coming up, and they can help market and communicate what the end users or those teams or departments need to do as far as actionable items to make the implementation easier. So they can, it's not exactly the agile part of it, but they can, for example, adopt like an ADCAR kind of change management into the marketing and communications to be able to help the teams communicate out. And that saves a world of time for the teams to have to document and reach out to people and team by team and saying this is what's coming up, and sometimes you don't have the time as a team to do it, so you're telling people last minute of what you need, and that will save a world of time there.
Yeah,
I
incorporating them into the planning process is just instrumental, and I don't look at it as like them forcing themselves into that. Is really those other teams should be bringing them in, right? We want to these planning processes should have everyone that you need in order to be successful, in order to deliver value to your end user, customer, whatever it is. And with that thinking, that means marketing communications may need to be involved in the planning, and they need to come with a curious mindset to understand where they may be needed. Because if I'm a tech person, I may not be thinking around the marketing and communication standpoint, but I might be excited about a certain revolutionary feature that's going out. That marketing communication person might not have any idea what I'm talking about, but just the fact that I'm passionate about it should be a trigger to say, hey, let me understand what this is. Because if that person's passionate about it, maybe this is something that our end users might be passionate about it, and have that curiosity to go and ask those questions.
Yeah, and translate to those end users, to those people, right? So you're talking in one technical term, they can translate it in a way that everyone would understand, and be able to absorb and even help and participate in it.
And yeah, I know we are almost on time. Just to add a little different color to that from product strategy perspective, think about the whole offer from marketing and sales perspective. End of the day, they are the ones who are selling that whole offer to the customers. And if they are not aware of the new features which are coming in or being deployed in 2 weeks or 4 weeks or 6 weeks, then it becomes really difficult for them to, plan ahead and start promoting that and show how their offer, their product or service is better now, and it's going to be much better in future as compared to the competition.
And with that said, strong finish, guys. Very strong finish. I can't thank the three of you enough, not only for the time and energy invested, but obviously the wisdom shared. I will let people know we only scratched the surface on the amount of questions that we had here. So a lot of leverage for the future as we move forward. But we do hope you have some actionable takeaways for your Agile journey, of course. As I mentioned earlier, we will be sending a recording out to today's session along with the survey. Please respond, as it helps us so much. If we didn't get to your question, and there were several of those, or if you're interested in continuing the conversation, please reach out to us at agiletransformation@kforce.com. With that said, you'll start to see things fairly soon for our next installment as we tackle the modern world of work. But we just want to thank everybody for joining us as well, and also for those who invested their questions today. So, guys, thanks again. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you all.
4 gold coins for you, Andy.
I get 4?
That's great.
You've made my day.
It was great. It was fun. Thanks, guys.
Thank you all. Bye now.
Thank you, everybody.